alterations were made without parliamentary approval and, if left unchecked, would violate the 1999 Constitution as amended. Following his motion, the House constituted a 7-man ad hoc committee chaired by the lawmaker representing Borno State in person of Mukhtar Betara to investigate the allegations and report back for further legislative action. And in a statement issued in Abuja and jointly signed by the Minority Leader Kingsley Chinda, Minority Whip Ali Issa, Deputy Minority Leader Aliyu Madaki, and Deputy Minority Whip George Ozodinobi, the caucus said that suspending implementations of tax laws was necessary to allow Betara-led committee to complete its assignment. Meanwhile, as Nigeria prepares to roll out a sweeping tax reforms on January the 1st, 2026, the Nigerian Employees Consultative Association (NECA) has cautioned that the success of the policy will depend less on ambition and more on coordination, consultation and sensitivity to the fragile state of businesses. The Director General of NECA, Adewale Smart Oyerinde, while speaking with the Labour Writers Association of Nigeria (LAWAN) during the end of the engagement, stated that while the 2026 hold promise as the year when Nigeria begins to reap the fruits of the ongoing fiscal and monetary reforms, it also coincides with the build-up to the 2027 general elections, an overlap that could complicate implementations. Oyerinde maintained that no doubt politics would take center stage from January. He warned that governance and economic reforms must not relegated to the background. NICA boss said the reforms, particularly the tax reforms, required stability, discipline and sustained attention, not distractions driven by political contestation. Oyerinde declared that from NECA's perspective, the tax reforms must be evaluated primarily on whether it would help businesses survive and grow.
Will this reform help us to achieve the overall economic objective of growing this economy? Will it play a part, if not in whole, but will it play a part in helping SMEs to grow? Will it play a part in making the business environment a bit more hospitable? So when the private sector says an average business across the country is paying over 90 different taxes, levies and fees, it is not a conjecture, it is not statistics, it is real life number of taxes. So when the system has now come to streamline all those taxes, to make it more easier to pay, reduce the instead of multiplicity of taxes, give concessions to employees, give reliefs to employers, generally make the environment a bit more conducive in the context of the tax, then you start asking yourself, will those alterations that are done by Nigerians too, whether in high offices or low offices, are they sufficient to hold this nation to ransom? So when you arrive at your answer, then you can also look for public good. I will go ahead with this. For whatever good, I will progress with this. What can I do to mitigate the damage, which we think the National Assembly have done, to inform a committee to investigate, because you have to investigate it. And that's the way to build institutions.
The Director General of the Nigerian Employees Consultative Association (NECA), Adewale Smart Oyerinde, has faulted the lackadaisical communication attitude of the Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Services, Zaka Dedeji, in the ongoing tax reform processes, describing it as a poor communication with the private sector. The NICA DG, who spoke with the journalists on Tuesday in Lagos on the controversy surrounding the tax reform bills, said the reforms had benefited from extensive engagement by the Presidential Tax Reform Committee, but warned that gaps in communication were fueling misunderstanding and resistance. He urged the FIRS Chairman, Zaka Dedeji, to come out openly to address concerns from the private sector noting that clearer communications will help calm tensions and correct misinformation. The NICA DG noted that no policy, regulations or legislation in Nigeria has enjoyed the level of consultation recorded by the tax reforms, despite what he described as highly organized antagonism. Against the process, he said from the beginning the Presidential Tax Reforms Committee, led by a renowned tax practitioner, Taiwo Yedele, did a human job in engaging from the grassroots to the top. NICA DG said recent controversies, including the circulation of gazetted but unpassed version of the bill, underscore the reality of interest in any form of effort. He warned that it was not sufficient enough to throw the whole tax reform into a bin, but rather those areas identified should be investigated, amended, and resettled.
The private sector is the biggest stakeholder in the context of this tax reform, and the success or failure of it rests directly on the private sector. But the chairman has already engaged. He has not engaged the private sector directly. He has not created a forum, deliberate forum to engage the private sector. Even when we reached out for engagement, for him to share his perspective, he's the face of this whole thing beyond the presidential committee. But the presidential committee has been doing all the talking. I think the chairman should come out and also engage the private sector. This is a charge that we are putting on him, that he has not done very well in the context of engagement with organized private sector. The second part is the issue of communication, which has become a major challenge for this country. Without casting aspersion on the work of the National Orientation Agency or Ministry of Information, I think they've not done very well in engagement, in communicating. We think it took the presidential committee to come up with innovative schemes, and that's what I said. You have to come up with innovative schemes to address innovative challenges. They have to call out for volunteers. They have to call out for media influencers to be part of people that can create content to educate people. As those ones are creating positive content to educate, you have mischief makers also creating content to misinform. So you have to just be on your feet, doing all you can to engage. But the communication has not been apt from the perspective of the FRS. The last engagement we had was on the 9th of December with the chairman of the presidential committee to come and share with the private sector what else should we know, or what else should we be looking up to the night before the implementation. And we had over 500, 600 employers, participants on the Zoom call. That shows people are itching to hear from the right people. And if you don't create that opportunity for the right people, if you don't create that opportunity for them to hear you, there will be mischievous people that will create content.
The Federal High Court in Abuja on Tuesday ordered the remand of the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, SAN, at the Kuje Correctional Center, pending the hearing and the termination of the bail application. The trial judge, Justice Emeka Nwite, also ordered the remand of his co-defendants, his son Abubakar Malami, and one of his wives, Bashir Asabe. Justice Nwite made the order after taking arguments from the defense team, led by Joseph Daudu, SAN, and the prosecution counsel, Ekele Hanacho. Malami and his co-defendants are facing a 16-count money laundering charge preferred against them by the Economic and Financial Crime Commission. The EFCC alleges that the defendants conspired at various times to conceal, retain, and disguise the process of unlawful activities running into several billions of naira. And according to the charge, the alleged offenses span several years and include the use of companies and bank accounts to launder funds, the retention of cash as collateral for loans, and the acquisition of high-value properties in Abuja, Kano, and other locations. The Commission further alleges that some of the offenses were committed while Malami was serving as Attorney General of the Federation in breach of the Money Laundering Prohibition Act 2011 as amended and the Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022. The Lagos government has warned residents and traders around Oluwole Market and adjoining streets, Lagos Island, to stay 50 meters away from the burnt 21-story Great Nigerian Insurance GNI building for their safety. The government also warned that disobeying the directive will be termed as criminal offense, and anyone who violates the warning will be arrested and prosecuted. The warning was given when the team from the Lagos State Building Control Agency, LAPSCA, led by its General Manager, Pai Florence, and the Permanent Secretary, Office of Urban Development, Bolahon, inspected the scene of the incident. And according to LAPSCA Manager, the government has a responsibility to protect everyone, noting that all the buildings within the 50 meters radius have been sealed and will not be reopened until the construction of the GNI building. The Permanent Secretary Office of Urban Development, Agbolanwoke, said that all relevant agencies have been working together to ensure that other affected buildings do not collapse on the people, which is the reason for the enforcement of the 50 meters radius. Dr. Olajide Abiodun said that Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has put in place a special task force to look into the deconstruction of the GNI building. And when the normalcy will return to the scene, Olajide said a team of experts are already discussing with the government on when the construction of the building will start and end. He also called on property owners to ensure their buildings are insured in case of fire incidents. The National Insurance Commission has insisted that there will be no extension of the ongoing recapitalization deadline in the insurance industry, and saying that the timetable is fixed in law and cannot be shifted. NICOM's Deputy Commissioner for Insurance Technical, Dr. Usman Jankara, who represented the Commissioner for Insurance and Chief Executive Officer of NICOM, Olusegun Mosin, at a seminar for insurance journalists in Abuja on Tuesday, made the Commission's position clear during a question and answer session. He said that any change would require a fresh legislative process and presidential assent. Jankara said the deadline contained in the Nigerian Insurance Industry Reform Act 2025 remains July 30th, 2026, insisting that serious operators should be able to comply. He said the Commission believed that the deadline is clearly highlighted by NIRA is doable. It is reasonable, and it is something serious that players within the insurance sector will be able to meet within that time frame. And that's it on the local news. We'll now take a short break. Where we'll come back. We'll take some stories from the foreign scene. Welcome back. At the foreign scene, a federal judge has blocked the administration of President Donald Trump from stripping temporary protection from deportations from South Sudanese citizens living in the United States. The U.S. District Judge Angel Kelly in Boston granted an emergency request on Tuesday in a lawsuit filed by the several South Sudanese nationals and an immigrant rights group. The order prevents the temporary protected status TPS for South Sudanese citizens from expiring on January the 5th, as the Trump administration has sought. The lawsuit, led by African Communities Together, accuses the U.S. Department of Homeland Security of acting unlawful in its effort to strip the South Sudanese citizens of TPS, a U.S. immigration status granted to citizens of countries experiencing natural disasters, conflict, or other extraordinary circumstances that could make return to their homelands dangerous. The status was initially granted for South Sudan in 2011 when the country officially broke away from Sudan. Most United Nations Security Council UNSC members have slammed the Israel recognition of Somaliland at a meeting convened in a response to the move, which several countries said that may also have serious implications for Palestinians in Gaza. The United States was the only member of the 15-member body and not to condemn Israel's formal recognition of the breakaway region of Somalia at the emergency meeting in New York City on Monday, although it said that its own position on Somalian land had not changed. Addressing the UNSC, Somalia's UN ambassador Abu Bakr Dahir Osman implored members to firmly reject Israel's act of aggression, which he said not only threatened the fragment Horn of Africa, but and the Red Sea region. In particular, Osman said that the Somalian was concerned that the move could be aimed at advancing Israel's plans to forcibly relocate the Palestinian population from Gaza to the northwestern region of Somalia. The United States military says it has killed or captured about 25 ISIS fighters in a wave of attacks over 9 days in Syria. The U.S. Central Command, which oversees the U.S. military's Middle East operation, issued a statement on Tuesday marking the conclusion of the operation this month. The campaign followed the killing of 2 U.S. soldiers and a civilian interpreter by an ISIL gunman in Syria on December the 13th and wide-scale U.S. strikes against the group 6 days later. CENTCOM's statement said that the U.S. Central Command and partners across Syria killed at least 7 ISIS members and captured the remainder during 11 missions conducted by December 20 to December 29th. The UAE says that it rejects accusations of the support for the Southern Separatists, STC, and that is committed to Saudi security, but that will withdraw its counterterrorism unit in Yemen. And this comes after Rashad al-Limi, head of Yemen's Presidential Leadership Council, cancelled a joint defense deal with the UAE, calling for its forces to leave Yemen within 24 hours. Saudi Arabia, whose coalition carried out strikes in southern Mokala port on what it said were the UAE weapons shipments to the STC, backs the 24-hour deadline for UAE troops withdrawals. Yemen's Presidential Council also declared a state of emergency and imposed a 24-hour blockade on all air, land, and sea crossing into Yemen. And Iran has promised to respond harshly to any aggression, and after the United States President Donald Trump threatened the further military action should the Tehran attempt to rebuild its nuclear program or missile capabilities. President Massoud issued the warning on X on Tuesday, a day after Trump met Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at his Florida estate, where he firmly leaned into the Israel regional narrative yet again. The U.S. had now previously said it would target Iran's missile capabilities, which has long been an Israel aspiration, focusing instead on Tehran's nuclear program. Iran has repeatedly said its nuclear activities are for civilian purposes, and neither the U.S. intelligence nor the UN's nuclear watchdog found any evidence of atomic weapons production before the June attacks by the U.S. and Israel. And I'll take a short break. When we'll come back, we'll give you some stories in sport. Welcome back in sport. The Super Eagles of Nigeria completed a perfect group stage campaign at the 2025 African Cup of Nations with convincing 3-1 victory over Uganda, while Tunisia and Tanzania both secured qualification after sharing the points in their final Group C encounter. Head coach Eric Chelle made 8 changes to his starting lineup, but Nigerians' depth was evident as they controlled the contest from the outset. And elsewhere in Group C, Tunisia and Tanzania played out a tense 1-1 draw, a result that saw both sides progress, with little separating the teams in a cagey opening period. The game's first major moment arrived late in the first half when Tunisia were awarded a penalty following a VAR review, with Gabi converting from the spot to give the North Africans the lead. Tanzania responded shortly after the restart through Fielsa Salem, who struck low from the outside the box, and after being set out by Novatus Miroshi, catching Tunisia goalkeeper Ayman Daman out and restoring parity. The President of Nigerian Boxing Federation and Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, has expressed condolences to Nigerian-born boxing star Anthony Joshua and the families of two individuals who reportedly lost their lives in Monday's road accident along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. In a statement issued on Tuesday, Edun described Joshua as a national treasure and said the entire Nigerian boxing community stands in solidarity with him during the difficult period. He extended heartfelt sympathies to the bereaved families, noting that the loss of life is deeply distressing. Edun assured Joshua and the affected families of the prayers and support of the Nigerian boxing family, wishing the heavyweight champion a swift recovery, while urging strength and comfort for those mourning their loved ones. The accident reportedly occurred shortly after 11 a.m. on Monday when the Lexus SUV conveying Joshua and three others collided with a stationary truck in Makun, Ogun State, near the Danko filling station before Shagamu interchange. And Lazio manager Maurizio Sarri has undergone a minor heart operation after being diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, a condition that affects the heart's rhythm. And according to the report on Tuesday, the procedure was routine and the Serie A club expects the 66-year-old to return to his regular duties within the next few days. In a statement posted by the club's official X account, SS Lazio confirmed that Sarri underwent a transcatheter ablation procedure using the pulsed field ablation technology at the Policlinico Tor Vergata Hospital. The operation was successful and carried out by Professor Andrea Natal, an internationally recognized pioneer with more than 30 years of experience in treating atrial fibrillation. And that's where we draw the curtain on tonight's news. I remain Victor Daniels. Good night.